intellectual and psychosocial disabilities within the criminal justice systems. And we found that the judiciary had not shied away from protecting their rights. But the problem I mentioned earlier was keeping the realization of these rights away. So, for example, one court says one statement, the other one says another, the other one contradicts, then when it goes higher, even more judicial chaos. So I think I can leave this copy here if someone who is interested. So, for example, this issue of the president making judicial decisions, somebody being detained at the pleasure of the president, indefinite sentences, people languishing in the bureaucracies for years awaiting a decision. And these are persons who might have psychosocial or mental disabilities. It's an issue that you've canvassed quite well. Some high court judges, we said we're not going to be individual, just going to give a very objective and overall analysis, but some high court judges have gone as far as to declare those aspects unconstitutional. I think it's the CPC around section 166, they're about 162 to 166, they're about. Some high court judges have actually declared a number of those sections unconstitutional. As if oblivious that that has happened, another set of judges in the high court do something contradictory altogether. They didn't even hear that their sister or brother had declared something unconstitutional. I don't know, there are very high walls between your offices and chambers. And then another one innovates something else. Then it goes to the Court of Appeal, and even more chaos are introduced. So the result is that there's still a lot of people in our prisons, in our medical facilities that are not very good, malaria and all that, suffering just because we haven't made a decision. And I thought that that is really the crux of the challenge that we have faced in the last 14 years. It is not lack of trying from where I sit. I don't care about the other pessimists out there. For me, I think that many judges have tried to do the right thing. But I think it's the internal contradictions, the lack of consultations that have kept us where we are on many aspects that we would have long moved past. So in that regard, I wish to thank the High Court led by Justice Ogola, who thank you also for visiting me earlier this year, for making this forum, because this is where you can debate, this is where you can cross-pollinate your ideas, this is where you can agree on certain principles going forward. And I wish to suggest as I conclude that perhaps we should think of ways of breaking the barriers, ways of bringing down the judicial walls that separate you, I think. And that way, our country will move forward much faster. I had this idea that if, for example, you work together with the Judicial Academy and established thematic rapporteurs or committees that follow particular themes. So maybe there's someone that deals with mental health, someone that deals with sexual and reproductive rights, or maybe a committee, and it follows what we are doing permanently, reviews them, and comes up with certain things they are seeing, trends and patterns they are seeing, and then recommends a particular approach. The judiciary has already done this on a number of things, and I think this should not be an exception. It's quite possible. Once that consolidated approach is achieved, then I believe a different picture altogether can emerge of the judiciary. That is what I thought I should talk about. Thank you very much for listening. And I hope I've done justice to this discussion. Chair, I'm happy to take questions or comments, and we can move forward here. Okay.
Thank you very much for the powerful presentation. And we have 10 minutes. Sorry. Thank you very much for the powerful presentation. And sorry. We have 10 minutes to comment, ask questions, so that our key presenter can see how we can have an interactive session in 10 minutes, because the next presentation is coming in. Then from there, then we'll break for lunch. So please, questions, the presenter is here, is taking questions. And Justice Ongeri, who else can? Yes, it's all right, you are the second one. Yes, Mohochi, then Commissioner, then Ogola. So we'll start from there.
Thank you so much, Professor, for the very interesting discourse. My concern is about the mental health cases you talked about. And I think this is the place where we are going to emerge with a uniform way of dealing with these people. We have seen them in our courts, they are suffering. The hospitals say, for example, I'm in Voi, I try to send them to Mombasa for treatment. They say, Portris has no facilities for the mentally sick. The prison at Manyani, they say, we don't have a facility for these people. And I think it's time we had a conversation, because nobody can talk for them unless we do. So I think I'm going to ask you, what do you think we should do? I am also concerned about, okay, I was there in the old constitution, I'm there in the new constitution. And one thing I always wonder, do judges have rights too? Because when it comes to interviewing of judges, I find that our human rights are violated. You know, right to privacy. Your things are put in the public. I mean, we also have a right to privacy. As we are championing rights of others, isn't it time we also ensure that our rights are respected? How can we also respect the human rights of the judges when it comes to issues, you know, that we talked about today, what happened to Justice Mugambi, issues of, you know, finances. I mean, it's not fair for us 14 years down the line to be begging for what is rightfully ours, when the constitution is very clear that there should be a judicial fund where we should be having our money and do our things. So do judges have rights to, what can we do in that area to ensure that our rights are not violated? Now people even fear applying for higher office because you don't want to go and be humiliated in the open for the sake of getting a job. What can we do to make sure that our rights are also protected?
Thank you, Professor. My name is Caroline Haswa. I'm here representing the Nairobi branch as a council member. My question is on your salient features, Article 249, which aims to promote constitutionalism of independent constitutional commissions, be it JSC, be it NLC, be it CAJ, in my view has not been tested. We find too many matters coming to court, but courts are restricted by procedure. And what can the courts do to activate this feature to enable Kenyans enjoy the protections of the many, many, many constitutional commissions? Just to say, like, even the Human Rights Commission, why doesn't it have hearings? Because hearings is the best way of auditing overreach on human rights. The second one connected to that is the inquisitorial jurisdiction of the High Court or any special court of the High Court level. I hear this, that the High Court, we practice a common law session of adversarial system, I come from a space where I say Article 159 never told us to be adversarial. When somebody who is so poor in an environmental justice matter comes before court, a grandmother who things have been dumped on their land, where does this grandmother really inquire from? Where does she go? So how do we use that inquisitorial approach to bring human rights to bear? Thank you.
I will be upstanding so that you can see me. I am Justice Okwan. Mine is a comment and also a clarification, Prof. When you mentioned Rafiki case, my antenna went up because that was my case. But the decision you've given is contrary to what the court decided. Actually, the court allowed the film to show, subject to a caution that it's only for people who are adults. And I was surprised when you said that the court declined to allow the film to show. So I'm asking that you withdraw the barb and give me the bouquet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Professor, I think the presentation is very good. You've taken us through from 2010, running across. You seem to be a keen follower of what happens in court, and that's good. I had two issues. One has been taken up by my sister, Kasoa, on the issue of inquisitorial, but maybe just to add on something. In your interaction with the Katiba, do you think the constitutional design for the ELC court was to be adversarial or inquisitorial? And two, what are the 2 or 3 main areas which you think as a High Court we should pull up our socks maybe to serve our people better? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for this wonderful discourse. You gave barbs to the High Court in relation to matters getting stuck in our courts, even after we have done so well. You realize that these decisions which are made in the High Court, they go to the Court of Appeal, and some end up in the Supreme Court. And in as far as you are willing to give us barbs, what is the practical solution to this process? An example is, for example, the Uhuru Owino case, which was in Mombasa. This case was decided, I think, in 2018 by the ELC court. It went through the processes. Last week, the Supreme Court delivered a verdict which confirmed the decision of the court, the ELC court, but it has taken almost 8 years. When you give us barbs, what practical solution do you have for us? Because we also don't like matters staying in our courts. It gives the impression that we have control over the movements of these matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much for judges who have put in comments and questions. There is a proposal that one of the panelists in the next session is pressed of time, so we will request you, Prof, if you be there in the afternoon session, so that you can answer those questions and give your comments, so that we can allow the judge from Malawi. Is it from Malawi? That's, okay, you can start maybe answering a few.
Okay.
When it's okay.
When they're ready, let me know.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I was noting in a hurry. The first one, I think. Our approach to mental health is colonial. It's very colonial. What I will do is I will leave this book with you. Then you can look at it. Institutionalization is colonial. I'm sure all of us will remember, let me use this word, but it's not supposed to be used, a mad person in your local area. Sindio? That people knew, maybe you just know how to manage them, but generally they were okay. Their rightful place is communities, not institutions. And that's the conversation we should eventually have. I don't have the details to go into that now, but we make those particular recommendations here. On judges' interviews, yes, I agree. It's terrible. It is. And I wish there was a way of separating what can go to the public and what can go to the privates. Sometimes it is done, sometimes I don't think it's done that well. I think the public is for the intellectual staff. I think the private should be kept private. And you ask this question, how can judges get their rights back? How can they access their rights? And my answer there will be at many levels. I've also been privileged to be a mentee of the first Chief Justice under this Constitution, so I hear a lot about what his thoughts are. And some of the ideas I've picked from him are actually very sound. One of it is, why would you leave Justice Mugambi alone to handle very delicate matters? Why don't you empanel 6 or 5 judges of the High Court? Or 7? Who told you can't sit as 5? And the other day, Justice Ogola and my sister Frida, and just 3 people on a very heavy case. 349 politicians have handled it in the 2 houses. And then you want 3 judges to face the entire public hate. I think internally you can do something about it. Make sure you are 7 or 5. Who says no? That way the pressure is a bit diverted, I think. But Chief Justice Mtunga mentions to me something sometimes back, but I think it's political. So I think we have enough organs that can speak for us. And we just need to invoke that, both in matters of getting resources, lobbying, but also in matters of defending ourselves from unnecessary attacks. To be honest, some of them are just so unnecessary from where I sit. There was this question about, yes, independent commissions haven't achieved their rightful place. There was an attempt during Maina Kiai's time, during Jawako's time, especially at the heat of this post-election violence. But I think after that, all efforts have been made to ensure that these things don't move beyond where they are. We need to talk about that, because if the other institutions are weak, then the judiciary is exposed. The way I see it, is that since nothing else is working, the entire republic is looking to the judiciary for solutions. And that exposes judges very badly, even their individual lives, I think. So part of the solution for judges is to work together with the other institutions. What I think academics can do, which is where I belong, is to collaborate with all these institutions and see what we can do. For example, I have started a clinic in my university, and we already have a case in the Supreme Court, Amici. We've also taken up legal aid cases. And such forums can help us link up with the judiciary, for example, with the independent commissions. And if there's an issue, we have the liberty to raise issues. We have academic freedom by the Constitution. At least we're not limited by strictures. So if, for example, a judge wanted an application made in court, I think this is political, but it can happen. You can mention to a clinic that is friendly, and it can bring up the matter. It has happened in other countries I'm aware of. And that's where we exist together as professionals. Yes, I agree with you that I also don't see why the High Court is so restricted. One of the thoughts I had when I wrote this, imaginations, dreams, was that we would also go the way of epistolary jurisdiction, as India has gone. If that mother you talked about, or that villager wrote a letter to the judge and say, a letter on a foolscap, and say, I'm being evicted, please help, the judge should be able to help. I had expected it in my weird imaginations that the registry would have come up with even a way of vetting this kind of letters, a system of even getting representation, if that is possible, and then these people can get help in the judiciary, regardless of who they are and where they're coming from. So I think we have sat on that, and it's something perhaps the Court of Original Jurisdiction should consider. The Rafiki case, perhaps I am misguided. My original understanding, when you read it now again, was that there was an interim order that allowed it to be, how do you call it? To be screened. Is it just a week? I think it was just a window of a week, after which the court went back. Once the interim orders were done, the court went back and gave a judgment that sided with the board. Is that the case, Judge? What was the ultimate decision in this case? If I'm wrong, then you get your baque. If you are right, then... Yeah, that was my original decision.
Okay, Prof, I didn't have the mic when you asked the question.
Yes.
But I was really just focusing on the filming of that movie.
The
interim. The court allowed it to show. And then thereafter, well, the case went to another judge, so I would not comment. But I'm asking for my bouquet.
We shall give you the bouquet for the interim, and then we give a leaf, perhaps, to the other judge. Thank you very much, Judge, for making sure that happened. And actually, that's the approach I thought would have happened at the end, where we put restrictions. Like, I don't think some videos should be seen by children, some films, or just in public or during normal hours. There could have been some restrictions of making sure we take care of the younger ones, and stuff like that. So thank you very much for doing that. Yes, about ELC, I think about ELC, by the way, I was surprised, Judge, that it went the way it has gone. Courts, labor, environment, was that they would be more informal. They would take on new practices that we're now calling AJS here, but some people call alternative dispute resolution. They would maybe mediate, they would negotiate, but they would also inquire, even visit. They would not be fixed, I don't know. So I thought that historical injustice of that nature would have demanded a different approach to things. And me thinks that we went wrong in a big way by just making it another high court level court. Yeah, and that way you've had discussions that perhaps you can even transfer judges anyway. You've had that they're just the same. I think a different speciality was expected from what I thought initially, but who am I? Things happen the way they go. Then there's a question. And things about judiciary that I understand that this is a very difficult assignment. I understand that you're going through a lot in terms of the pressure of the work itself, but I also understand that judges, unlike academics, deal with a real victim with blood, flesh, and bones. Somebody is in your court. They want justice that is particularized to themselves. You don't have a time to theorize. So you saw this one today, you saw the other one tomorrow, you saw the other one. Academics, which is where I belong, we have time of reflection, and we have an opportunity to look at a lot of cases over time and even say, this is the trend where we should go. This is the other trend. And perhaps, therefore, these are two skills that needed to be together, but are not. I think that forums like this, which bring us together, are the way to go. In the medical terms, we have the doctor, the physician, but we also have public health officials. No health system can work without both. So a normal doctor is dealing with sick people that temperature is high, sugar is there, that is there, and they're just seeing different people every day. Sometimes they don't realize that the same cough was in Kerugoya, the same cough was in Kisii, the same cough was in Kericho, and perhaps there's an epidemic. So it is the public health official that then brings that to light. That kind of merger between physicians and public health is what saves a public health system. In fact, the safety of a public health system is not in the physician, it's actually outside. Meetings that, if I answer, then if the problem and then the solution. The problem I have seen with the High Court has not been for lack of trying. I think I mentioned that earlier. There's a lot of effort. I have seen so many cases since I write on these things where judges have tried different things. I wish we had a whole day to just think about them. Different innovations in different cases. And you wonder, oh, I wish this was just taken forward by that next person. I wish that was adopted by that other person. But you are too busy to see. You're too busy dealing with the actual clients to see the whole overall picture. So there's a breakdown of communication. There's silos. That's why, Judge, it was good that you put this together. The silos can start breaking. So my recommendation then is that have committees on thematic areas from diverse groups. Almost what you did with court users, but now at a different level, where people could even be academics, advocates, yourselves, and other people that are knowledgeable, and with that subject lead, and they keep monitoring maybe developments in a certain area, and advising what could we do, how do we interject here, how do we intercede there, how could we make ourselves better. And this is something that could be done easily under the umbrella of the Judicial Academy from where I sit. And then once that happens, then the solution can be found. And it can't be done at the High Court singularly. Remember, I also made the right that you can't isolate the High Court, because some of the things are getting stuck in the Court of Appeal. Some of the things are getting stuck in the Supreme Court. Perhaps the solution has to be an institutional mechanism that brings together all these institutions and have regular meetings where thinking is happening, consultation is happening, and perhaps some guide notes. There are things you've done well as I finished. One of them is, for example, I think every lawyer now understands that if a matter is going on in Parliament, the court will not intervene. I think that's a good decision. Many lawyers disagree, but I think it's fantastic. As a constitutional lawyer, give the other institutions a chance to finish, then we shall deal with the violation, unless someone is being killed. So that's a principle that I think you've applied consistently in many cases so far. We can pick something else and again establish a principle, then something else, and that way this kind of convoluted approach to things where cases stay 9 years would stop. Thank you very much for listening. It was very, very nice talking to you. God bless you. Have a nice time.
Thank you, Prof, for taking us through. And can we give him a round of applause in appreciation? Tena, asante, Prof. I want to take this opportunity now to invite the panelists, Lady Justice Zion Ntaba. Her profile is already projected. So I will invite her to. Yes. Lady Justice Zion Ntaba.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see me
We can
and
hear.
see my.
We can see you.
You can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. And also the.
Merry Christmas!
From a constitutionalism point of view, by looking at a case which a number of us have had to look through, which is the Attorney General versus how the Constitution cannot be allowed to life museum piece. The court must continue to breed growth and development of the state through it, conceive it in that primary duty of the judges is to make the Constitution grow and develop in order to meet the just demands and aspirations of an ever-developing society, which is part of the wider and larger human society governed by some acceptable concept of human dignity. I start there because when you look at the concept of vagrancy, you look at that many of these nuanced or related offenses in Malawi and Africa originate from colonial rules. And from those colonial rules, most of our countries, especially as common law countries, got the concept of protection of public order becomes very significant when you see the effect or the use of these nuance of vagrancy laws or petty offenses. And if you look at the origins, they mirrored in a number of issues, but mostly economic and cultural. If you look at the UK, they were meant to curtail mobility of persons and criminalize begging, the labor for land industrialists, and removing the undesirables from the cities. They were meant to reduce the cost incurred by local municipalities and parishes to look after the homeless or people who were sick. And they were supposed to prevent property crimes by creating broad crimes, providing for wide discretion for law enforcement officers. And I think this goes to the very essence if you look at those particular sections. For our country, you look at 184C and 184.1, it has A, B, C, and D. You have idle and disorderly, you've got rogue and vagabond, all sorts, and I'm sure that Kenya has similar provisions. And these laws, from a point of view, the hosts are adopted in most African countries, even the non-English speaking ones. You'll find that most of them have them and independence, after the adoption of human rights in the institutions. So of Malawi, the concept of vagrancy has come before the courts numerous times. And post 1994, which is our human rights human rights constitution, you found that judges started rethinking the way Section 184.1c was being used. And Justice Tambaya, who passed on about a month ago, he was a judge of the Supreme Court, but a very brilliant judge, stated this in one of his cases. I've examined the facts which are presented before the magistrate's court. It is not very clear to me for what purpose the juvenile was found wandering about within the trading center. When he was questioned by police, he said that he came to the northern region to look for employment, which is very typical of people that are looking for jobs or are migrant workers. It is possible that this is a person who needs care and protection. He is a needy person, I am concerned that the charge of being a rogue and vagabond can be used to oppress needy persons who are not criminals. The juvenile in the present case would be a clear example where mere poverty, homelessness, and unemployment would land a person in prison. I'm of view that the facts did not support the offense being a rogue and vagabond. And you will see from a lot of the, if you are the High Court, like the High Court in Malawi, you will notice that when we have confirmation cases, I don't know if you have that process where every offense in the magistrate court in the criminal space, if it exists 2 years, comes to the High Court for confirmation. You will find that a lot of these vacancy offenses, once they would come through to the High Court, they would actually be taken out in terms of being, there would be withdrawals, or there would be acquittals because the evidence and the facts didn't tally, or the guilty charge didn't tally. So to that extent, it took us a number of years from 1997 to actually 2015. The decision came out in 2017 for actually somebody to finally highlight and say, this, come bring a case before us. I said this case, this provision, section 184(1)(c), which is a rogue and vagabond, was unconstitutional. Now, Mayeso Gwanda is a very interesting case because he was a paper bag seller who was picked up around in the morning for being a vagabond. And he got lucky that when he went before the magistrate court, before he pleaded guilty, there was a lawyer who had a big heart for human rights and decided to take on his case right there and then and ask the court to actually refer to the Constitutional Court. And the Chief Justice actually certified it as such. I and 2 other judges sat on this particular court, and it was very interesting to look at the arguments that the Minister of the General was bringing up and saying the police need section 184(c). It gives them broad powers and all that. But when you look at the concept of section 184(c), broad in the very nature that it encompasses everybody. If I am found on the street, whether I'm in a car or not, at 3 a.m., I should be a rogue and vagabond because I'm out at an hour that I should not be at, even if I was similarly, the same way Mayeso Gwanda was walking or found on the street, I should have been arrested. But what we found with section 184(c) is that at most times, if it's a rich person in a car, they will never be picked up. But if it's a sex worker, a poor person, a homeless person, or a street kid, they would be picked up. And I think what was inherently obvious to us that if a law lends itself to open to arbitrary and discriminatory application or enforcement, then that particular law is very bad. And that provision, section 184(c), all 3 of us judges made our own judgments, and we agreed that it was unconstitutional. And we all picked various rights in the Constitution that it affected, whether it was the right to dignity, right to privacy, or even the right to movement. But one of the biggest things that we all agreed on was that it took away the concept. It was very much discriminatory. So the right of equality and discrimination is something that each and every person should have, and a law should apply to them equally. And now, in that regard, I very much like what Justice Kalembera, who was the other judge on the bench, said. He said, all in all, except as regards the violation of the right not to be discriminated against, where I differ with my learned judge, that was the other judge, my brother judge. There was another brother judge on the panel. The prescriptions of section 184. Once a year, the penal code do inevitable limitations to these rights. Section 184(c) is not justifiable when there are other policing tools. There's a wide range of provisions that the police could use. But even not only that, if a person is found with an offensive weapon, you can use that instead of saying the person is being a rogue and vagabond or loitering for whatever reason. If a person is smoking or selling drugs, then arrest them for that particular offense, as opposed to saying they're being a vagabond and use that provision as a holding charge or as a charge to actually discriminate against a person. And with that in mind, you saw that after the declaration of offense section 184(1)(c), the police decided to stop using 184(c) and decided to use they also the one that came before me, which was grabbed at the bar and were also picked up for loitering. So what the police see as constitutional, police started using this 184 as a whole to actually see how best they arrest people who are poor, people who are on the streets, and homeless sex workers. Before I go to cases that I'm going to talk about certain principles that came out after this decision made. And these are called the Principles on Decriminalization of Petty Offences in Africa, adopted by African Commission. What they do is they reiterate the human rights for and address issues of criminalization. They actually acknowledge that petty offenses are inconsistent with the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which all of our countries, and including Kenya, has ratified. And it called on African states to decreases of poverty and marginalization. From what I've been hearing from all the speakers, from the Chief Justice saying there are deep underlying issues in terms of governance that are causing this poverty and marginalization that need to be addressed for the judiciary to actually ensure that they're doing the work that they need to do. They need to reform outdated laws, and they need to stop arbitrary and lawful arrests for petty offences. As you will notice that one of the things the docket for most magistrates, which I hear a number of you judges have been, is that you'll find that your docket used to be clogged with petty offences as opposed to the major offences. But the final thing it does, it highlights human rights violations and explains how these offences often violate rights to freedom. I've been told to slow down, apologies. Health, human rights, it highlights health, human rights violations, explain how these offences violate the rights to freedom, ill treatment, arbitrary arrest, detention, and non-discrimination. But as also you've seen the other rights like privacy, dignity, all those. Now, our cases, the African Union also heard a case around 2020, which was a PALU advisory opinion on the compatibility of vagrancy laws with the African Charter. And when the African court issued its advisory opinion, it said that national laws that criminalize vagrancy are incompatible with human rights. They go on to say they're not only incompatible with the African Charter itself, but even the Children's Charter, as well as the Maputo Protocol. And in their opinion, they highlighted the role of the African court in promoting human rights and championing legal reform in African states. They also did say that we needed to widely have an interpretive way of assessing the kind of powers that this advisory opinion can use in our I love
I think we will stop there. We'll share after this. I think, I don't know whether you can hear us, Judge. We are unable to get you. I think we can stop there. Yeah. Then you can, though she is not hearing, we can give her an applause, a round of applause. Now, I think the next presentations of the panelists will be in the afternoon after lunch. So we can, let me take back to Okelo.
Please, let's give a round of applause to Justice Sergon. Sorry about that technology hitch. Right. We'll stop there for now, and we go for lunch. Let's come back at 3 p.m. exactly, so that we don't stay here too long, and take on the session that is supposed to be chaired by Justice Wakiaga. And the PJ has asked me to acknowledge Justice Agnes what's the second name? Yes, Nzei of ELRC. Judge, karibu sana. Asante. Please, let's go for lunch. Bon appetit. Let's be here at exactly 3 p.m. So that we can catch on time a little bit. Asante.
Oh, yeah. You have